Hello, everyone, and welcome to my first podcast. My first ever vlog. I am absolutely excited for all of this. I've been waiting to do this for a very, very long time. Please note that I'll be doing most of this unscripted. So, just thought I'd throw that little disclaimer out there. And, let's get started. If this is your first time, please don't forget to leave a like, share this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Alright, let's begin. So, I usually don't like talking about my political views on the internet. Okay, I really don't. I think it's embarrassing, I think it's demeaning, and I honestly don't think it really goes anywhere. But, I think in this case, I just wanted to share this because I wanted to be sure that I had a level head about this, and usually the only way for me to vent my frustration or my confusion about anything is to just talk about it. But, truth be told, I'm not even sure how to talk about it because I believe that what is happening here is absolutely absurd. Okay, before I begin this story, I wanted to say, first and foremost, I am neither left or right-leaning. I am a centrist. This is important to remember throughout the rest of the video. I am not left or right. I am a true neutral human being. I've always believed in just trying to find information myself. I don't want the system or any ideology telling me how to think or feel about something, because it's absurd to just simply blindly follow one ideology in a system that lets you freely do whatever you want, or at least when it comes to looking at things politically. There have been moments where I didn't fully agree with other people when it came to political topics, and usually I try to focus more on the gaming industry as far as politics go. Like with loot boxes and how corrupt our system is, but I think this, in a way, is just as important. Now, also note that even though I don't always agree with what other people are trying to say, I will fight for their right to say it. Okay, I've always been a firm believer in free speech, no matter how crazy, prejudice, or just downright liberal or over-conservative they may sound. So, with that being said, please understand that when I'm talking to other intellectuals, or at least people I believe to be intellectuals, that I usually try to hear them out first before I object to anything. And when I object to something, that doesn't mean I'm objecting them, I'm just objecting what they may or have already said. And I try to give as much of a rational reason behind it before I just put it all off like it's completely biased and they're not really relevant. In a way, it almost makes me wonder why I decided to choose this topic before I actually got into other ones. But I guess in this case, it's not entirely important. But what it started off as is a debate as to whether if net neutrality is good or bad. Okay, I mean, to most people who are likely watching this video, you probably think that net neutrality is a good thing, and I believe you. I mean, you're not wrong about the situation of, or in this case, the bare principle of being able to surf on the internet regardless of who your internet or cable provider happens to be. That is what net neutrality is. And even though we have lost our net neutrality, I honestly don't believe that, Big Brother is going to turn on us and be like, oh, well, you're not allowed to go to Google unless you have this package, or anything stupid like that. Because they know if they do, they'll lose their fan base, they'll lose their customers, they'll lose their clients, they'll lose everyone. And then they'll have customers leaving in droves because of it. So I honestly don't think that because we no longer have net neutrality that it's going to be an issue from then on. But believe it or not, this particular topic is not about that at all. No, It's about if net neutrality is communism or not. Look, I know it sounds weird coming out, and even weirder just thinking about it, but yeah, this is honestly what was going through my mentor's head. Well, we'll call him my mentor. My right-leaning mentor. It was a conversation that we had on Facebook, and I like to debate these kind of topics, online, challenge other minds, and see what they think. It's a small little hobby I might do on the side, just because I like to think and I like to know what other people are thinking when it comes to serious or not so serious political issues, such as the case with net neutrality. Now, you might be thinking by now, obviously it's not communism in any shape or form. Yes, I could have told you that, and here's why. So the first thing I was sent was about I think it's called the Blexit Party. Blaxit. I'm trying to pronounce it right. It sounds weird. But the short version of it is that he wanted me to look this up because it was about African Americans who were supposedly leaving the Democratic Party and into the Republican Party. So it was a bunch of right-leaning African Americans. And I'm like, okay, whoop-de-doo, that's totally fine. I mean, it's not like they can't be, Republicans. There is such a thing as being black and being a Republican, and I've met a few, and they've always had a level head about everything. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing. So I sent him a video on net neutrality. Trying to remember, I think it had something to do with, if I can remember the title at all, it's a huge win just happened for net neutrality. So this was a lot to unpack, at least politically. So after sending him that video, he says, so you support communism of the internet. Not all data packs have the same free market value, just like every other item is free on the market economy. Or rather, it's a free online market economy. To pretend otherwise is supporting the type of communism that they... sorry, that was my phone. To pretend otherwise is supporting this type of communism. And I'm sitting here a little bit confused for a second, and then I respond with, but I thought Republicans believed in the government not having that much control over the market at all. He seemed confused about it too. He says, no, Republicans believe in not trying to control the market, but establishing the rights to ownership. Net neutrality is entirely the opposite. Immediately begin to wonder, wait, if net neutrality means that it's essentially marketed neutrally to everyone, and everyone basically has the same playing field as, say, I don't know, Netflix, or opposed to smaller companies like and Vimeo, and further down the line there. I mean, I'm not even sure where to begin unpacking that part. Okay, so I go on to continue to ask him, have you been paying attention what the left and the center have been researching on this particular topic, or only the right? Not that it's a bad thing, just seems a bit odd that you would just sort of jump at this kind of conclusion because my data says otherwise. And I wanted to really think I just wanted to know his thoughts. So what he basically, what I asked him, okay, is how do you define net neutrality? And he just straight up says communism of the internet, or just communism. Then says again, not all data packets have equal market value. Net neutrality assumes that they do, which I don't think data packets are measured that way, but that was his thought, and I thought to myself, okay, well, what research backs this claim? That's why I'm a centrist. I don't want to biasly believe anything that the left or right or Democrats or Republicans just flat out believe, because to do so would be not only biased but just flat out ignorant. So then I straight up asked him, what he thought on this. He gives me the exact same statement as before, and I'm like, that does not answer my question. And he says, do you agree with the statement? Yes or no? And I told him, I need more replicated data if I'm able to agree or disagree with any political statement. Otherwise, it's just biased. Of course, this is just me just trying to stay absolutely chill about the whole thing. I mean, after all, it's just a political opinion, an idea. Nothing to really stress over. He says that it's not really a political statement, it's just factual. And he goes, do you agree or disagree? There are no politics in saying that not all data packs have equal market value. And then I asked him, or at least I told him, I need to know where you found that information. And he's like, God gave me that information. And I respond with ... And of course, the free market. So then I'm like, so it's a theory, a philosophy of sorts. He says, no, it is just a fact. Look at eBay. Look at its physical items sold on the market. This is not just a physical item, but it still has market value as information, just like a physical item. And then I was like, well, eBay dominated the online retail market for a while, but then Amazon stepped up and eventually took the playing field. They were able to catch up with them in the retail market. And then he says, this is not political. And then I said, but you said net neutrality is communism. Communism is political. I gave a little example there because I wanted to try to carefully explain, why I thought that something like this was completely invalid. Because I know I'm more of the guy who usually tries to focus on the economics of things rather than the politics of things, but yeah, I mean, if you're going to flat out say that net neutrality is communism, that is indeed political. This is why I personally believe that net neutrality is just that, neutral. I mean, it's in the name. I mean, how can you be neutral and communist? He goes on by saying that communism is an ideology based on equality, even in reality non-exists. Therefore requires violence to overcome the reality. And then I say, in some ways you're not wrong. However, I have to add that communism is also a form of government in which the prime authority is governing its community instead of the community governing themselves. He goes on by saying, unequal market value if data packets is the reality. Net neutrality is the government trying to force that reality not to be true. There's no such thing as community. I mean, if I had to look up the definition of community, it would likely tell me that what I'm in right now, our society, the civilization, the town in which I live in, all that is a community of some sort. If I went out into the wilderness and I found a whole bunch of animals in the ecosystem, yes, that is also called a certain form of community. If I were to go to church and we volunteer to do stuff around our city, that is participating in our community. These are very basic terms that I should not really have to describe as community, but let's just move on, shall we? I go on by saying that the problem with communism is that people tend to abuse it to the point where they believe that when they're in full control, acting on formal pragmatism and stripping away the community of most of its rights, that's why people tend to never let it work. Because by taking away something that people are really into or good at, it's basically equivalent of taking away something that someone really likes, only making them want it more. And that's part of the biggest reason why I believe that communism never worked. But hey, to be honest, I don't know that much about communism. For all I know, it could be working in certain places around the world. Because I've never, for the life of me, lived in a communist society, and I know I haven't been living in a communist society. But let's read on, shall we? I want to say, as far as marketing goes, with communism, it would mean that the authority figure in question would be the one making all of the money, and the labor would be for the entire government. That's communist marketing. Net neutrality, fortunately, is not like that at all. For net neutrality to be communism, that would literally mean that someone somewhere is taking a small fee, if not all of the money, from someone else who tries to sell something on the internet or pass off any kind of service. So, literally, for an example, let's say I make a YouTube video and I make, I don't know, $100 on it. And I don't get to keep all that money. The state decides how much money I'm allowed to keep. Well, it would be one thing if the state were to take, say, I don't know, a tax percentage, which would make sense, because, you know, taxes pay for everything. They pay for roads, schools, hospitals, well, I guess some hospitals, fire brigades, police units, all the essentials you need to run a town. Alright, but they don't even take all of it. They take like a very small percentage. And if it were communism, it wouldn't be like that at all. They would take almost all my money and probably only give me like, I don't know, 20% of it back, so I could at least live a more stable life. But yeah, as far as I know, I don't know any successful YouTube creators that live like that at all. Well, except for maybe lately, but that's for a whole different video. He goes on by saying that communism is a form of atheism and a forceful rejection of reality. Boy, I don't know about you, but it's gotten up to a point now where I'm kind of swimming in my own thoughts right now. So lots to say here. I go on by saying communism and atheism are two completely different things. First of all, communism is what I just defined, you know, an authoritarian figure of some sorts that literally evenly distributes everything amongst its community. Okay, and whatever work that you do is therefore for the community, not for yourself. America's not like that at all, and neither is net neutrality. Alright, I've already said all this. And I also go on to say that atheism is a simple belief that a deity or form of higher power simply does not exist. Or, at least in this case, not without proof. That's the layman's terms version of it. But he says that it's the same philosophy, different titles, because the liberals can never call something that which it really is. Okay, now he's putting libertarian on the plate. Well, I personally believe that libertarianism and communism are two completely different things. Like, very different. Like, I've always believed that communism is a form of government, and that libertarianism is more of a political ideology of sorts. I go on by saying that libertarianism and atheism are also two completely separate things. Libertarianism is an extreme or somewhat fair political philosophy advocating only minimal state intervention in the lives of its citizens. That's quite literally the definition of libertarianism. And that communism is also quite different. It's quite literally the opposite. And he goes on by saying, different maybe, but they have the same root in atheism. And then I say atheism is not a political ideology. It's just a belief that there is no celestial higher power, no gods, no God, no majestic spirit of any kind, or at least not without proof of any kind. It's not. I mean, it's just simply not political. It's more religious than anything, and it's barely religious at all. And he goes on to saying that, yes, it does. Atheism is the root of all political ideologies, except for capitalism. And I went online and actually did some actual research to see if I could replicate the data on which he says. Okay? Because I've already mentioned at the very beginning of the video that you should know by now that I am indeed a centrist, and I don't want to just outright believe anything that I hear about. This person, just literally says that God gave him this information, okay? Alright? Not that I don't believe that a higher power could give you information, okay? Because that's personally how I think the Bible was sort of made. Or at least, if it's not obvious by now, I'm pretty Christian, or at least I lean around that area. But I went online and found that European political authors of libertarianism were actually building this form of government, or at least the ideas of that government, based on their religious beliefs. So communism and libertarianism are actually built on religious agendas. He said it was atheist, but I went online and debunked that they were actually religious. So, to put that into perspective, it's a lot like saying you filled up a cup of water, but there's no water in that cup. It's just weird because some would argue that it's half empty or half full. He says that there's no water in there in the first place. Just take a minute to let that sink. So then I go on to say that regardless, atheism had nothing to do with either of those forms of government or ideologies. Wow, I am so exhausted right now. I did not think I would make this video this long, so I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that net neutrality is communism? Do you think that my friend was probably right about a few things? Because who knows? Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't. I'm not trying to take sides in either sides of these arguments at all. But please do me a favor. Let me know in the comments. What do you guys think? Think he was right about net neutrality, or maybe he kind of went off the deep end? And as usual, don't forget to hit that like button, and if you're new to this channel, please subscribe. Nepheon, out.